Good morning. Good morning. Chapter 5, verses 1 through 17. I don't like the way my voice is sounding. Okay. So just a lot of basic information here. But I think my personal reading, I didn't get much spiritually out of it. I think there was a verse that I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember now. But in the book by Ludlow, it talks about the sisters of Nephi, because he mentions them. He says, "And my sisters did flee with us." And he just talks about how the sons of Ishmael married the daughters of Lehi, but how the sons of Ishmael stayed with Laman and Lemuel, so there must have been more sisters because they went with Nephi. I thought it was interesting, something we had talked about earlier. And then I think last night in my reading, all I really thought about was when he said we fled into the wilderness. How scary that might have been. Like, we're like, oh yeah, they were in the wilderness before, but that was wilderness they knew. That was Jerusalem. They were kind of familiar with that terrain. This is the Americas, and I feel like maybe a little bit of South America. I feel like that's where most of this takes place. So it's jungle with scary things in it. So I can imagine being a woman, not knowing where to go, carrying my baby, watching out for snakes and jaguars and wild boars. Anyways, that's what I thought last night while I was reading. But they give a lot of evidence in this one about what I like about the evidence that they're giving me here is the way that they translate Hebrew. I have never really had a desire to understand Hebrew, but it's actually kind of nice to get that insight into it. So when he says the judgments and the statutes and the commandments of the Lord according to the law of Moses, basically it says in Hebrew that the article is repeated before each noun. So like where we would say the judgments, statutes, and commandments of the law, they say the judgments, the statutes, the commandments of the law, which I found very interesting when he breaks down Hebrew like that. Because sometimes you're kind of wondering, why did they say it like that? That's because that's how you say it in Hebrew. And then it talks some more about it. Why didn't Nephi just say that they were strict in observing the law? Instead, he explains that they observed the law, the statutes, the judgments, and the commandments of the Lord. The Hebrew language uses several words to imply different semantic aspects and subtle nuances of the English word law. One example is the word misbah, which means judgment or passing a verdict. This concept embraces most phrases of the legal trial. Another example of the word Torah, a word that connotes, I don't know, more than just the law in modern sense. Torah is derived from the verb yara, meaning to show, to instruct, to teach. And they say Joseph Smith never would have understood that about the Hebrew language. Then it goes into how they were industrious. They prosper, raise flocks, brought the record, multiply many swords, build buildings. And it says, Nephi was a good leader, and that's why they were industrious. And while I was reading it, I was like, yeah, they weren't lazy. He says, sorry. says, "And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did cause my people to be industrious and to labor with their hands." And that's something that you notice a lot about the conflict between the Lamanites and the Nephites, is that the Lamanites, or the dissenters of the Nephites, are lazy. They are so lazy. They want somebody to raise their food, their flocks for them, raise their grain and their food for them. They want a king to tell them what to do. You know, they're just so lazy. And you can see that in the world today. Rather than work and be industrious for yourself and get some money for yourself, try hard at something, they want socialism, you know? That's something that occurred to me last night while I was reading. Okay, not last evidence, but okay, so he's talking about the grammatical construction referred to as the cognate accusative. A noun is used with the same root verb as in Genesis 37:5 when we learn that Joseph dreamed a dream. Now, this is something that I've thought about before in the Book of Mormon. So why do they say it like that? Why didn't they just say he had a dream? Well, that's because that's how it's said in Hebrew. In English, we would normally phrase it as Joseph had a dream. Many examples of the cognate accusative exist in the Hebrew Bible, though this form is not apparent in most translations. The Book of Mormon includes many uses of the cognate accusative, such as, "I will work a great and marvelous work. This is the desire which I desired of him. Build buildings. Succor those that stand in need of succor. Judge righteous judgment." Again, we perceive the footprint of divine influence in the wording used in the Book of Mormon. So, for some reason this morning, I just find it very fascinating about the Hebrew language and why they, why didn't they just say it this way? Because that's how you say it in Hebrew. I've never put it together before. I gotta sneeze. I'm sorry. And then, some more evidence about the temple. So, when Nephi builds a temple, a lot of the scholars who want to disprove the Book of Mormon said that no real Jew would build a temple outside of Jerusalem. However, there has been discovered on papyri discovered in 1954, we learn of a large group of Jews who fled from the land of Jerusalem, perhaps at the time the city was destroyed, who resided far up the Nile. These Jews developed a program to build a temple in their new location. An archaeologist says, an Israeli archaeologist, he says the most remarkable discovery at this place is the temple which occupied the northwestern corner of the citadel. Its orientation, general plan, and contents, especially the tabernacle, are similar to the Temple of Solomon. I find that fascinating. That they're like, oh, no real Jew would do that. And it's like, they did it. And here's historical evidence. People are like, there's no historical evidence that the Book of Mormon was real. Well, we don't really need historical evidence that the Book of Mormon was real, but here's historical evidence that things that happen in the Book of Mormon did happen elsewhere. I like it. At first I was like, I don't know if I like this historical evidence part of this study, but it's actually very fascinating and I enjoy it a lot. So, let's see. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, next week we're coming up on the Isaiah chapters. So I'm going to try to finish my book. I'm almost there. And hopefully we can all have some good insights on Isaiah. All right, I've got to go to work. 7:20, crap, I got to go to work. Okay, bye guys.